Hi everyone and welcome back to this channel. Today I'm so excited to have some romance recommendations again because it's been quite a while since I've done one of these videos, and to make one of these I have to have some good books obviously to recommend to you. So I went through all of the books that I've read over the past 1 or 2 years and thought about what common themes do we see here. And I've actually been reading quite a lot of Rockstar romance or musician romance. So I thought that would be a good idea because I actually liked quite a few of the books that I've read that had this Rockstar musician theme. And the reason for that is that a lot of these books aren't just the typical fluffy romances, but they have a lot of depth to them. They deal with the topics of fame, identity, sense of self, heartbreak, parasocial relationships, and true connection to someone. So whether you're like a die-hard music fan as I am, or you're just really into some good deep romances, I hope that these recommendations will be something for you. The first book I want to talk about is a YA book, but I still think that there are some themes in there that are really cool and interesting, and that's why I still wanted to include it. It is I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman, and Alice Oseman is such a great author, especially for young adults, and I think we all know her series Heartstopper is really popular. There's been a Netflix show made out of it, and here we have one of her standalone romances. I actually made a video a while back where I've read just Alice Oseman books for, I don't know, a week or so. And that was one of the books that I read in that video. And on the blurb it says, "For Angel, life is about one thing. The Ark, a pop rock trio of teenage boys taking the world by storm. Being part of the Ark's fandom has given her everything she loves. Her friend Juliet, her dreams, her place in the world. Jimmy owes everything to the Ark. He's their frontman, and playing in a band with his mates is all he ever dreamed of doing. But dreams don't always turn out the way you think, and when Jimmy and Angel are unexpectedly thrust together, they find out how strange and surprising facing up to reality can be." And as you've just heard, this book follows Angel, who is the super obsessed fan of the Ark, which is a band, and Jimmy is the band's lead singer. And what I really liked about this book is that it really dove deep in the behind the scenes of the fame, and it didn't just glorify it, and it really digs into the reality behind the glamour. Jimmy, the frontman, suffers from anxiety because of the fame and the pressure that comes with it, while Angel is really trying to find her way in the world outside of being a fan. Alice Oseman perfectly captured what it's like to idolize someone and make that your whole identity, and how that also shapes your identity. And it's really about the question of how well do we really know the people that we admire, and how much of our own identity do we lose when we shape our identity around someone else. And I think, especially right now, it's really relevant because with the whole world of social media, it's really easy to think that you know someone and to really feel connected to the people that you're following and the fandoms that you're in. And I know that very well because I'm a Swiftie. And this fandom can sometimes be really, there's a lot of identity that comes with it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you really have to think about how well do I really know this person? The person that is famous is also just another human being with the good sides and the bad sides. And they might like parts of their job, but they might not like others. And especially with also Chappell Roan and all of the controversy about her speaking up to paparazzi and stuff, you can really see that people feel entitled to their time and to getting something back from them just for being a fan. And I think that's a very interesting question because of course there has to be some kind of connection to have this kind of stardom and to have this kind of relatability also in your music, in your songs. So all very interesting questions, I think, that are explored here in this book a little bit and also in some of the others that I'm going to talk about. So if you're interested in that and you don't mind reading YA, then I would really recommend this book. Next up, we have Idol by Kristen Callahan. Now, I have some mixed feelings about this one, so let's get into it. It is the first book in the VIP series, and it follows Killian, a rock star that is burnt out, and Liberty, who is dealing with her own grief and isolation. It basically tells the story of him turning up on her lawn, drunk, and that's how they meet. And it's in the beginning a very interesting setup and interesting story, because I think that she doesn't really know who he is, or maybe she does after, but definitely not in the beginning, and they get to know each other. He's burnt out, he doesn't want to get back on stage, and then he decides to take her on tour with him. Here's the part that I didn't enjoy as much. She is, of course, also a really talented musician, and then he ends up taking her with him on stage and everything, and yeah, that just felt a little bit too predictable to me, and some of the drama really felt a bit forced, and there could have been more depth to the story in comparison to the other ones. But if you're just looking for a really cute rockstar romance that is also a bit predictable and that will give you exactly what you would expect, then that can also be a good thing. And it is a really quick read that is hitting a lot of the marks that you would want for a rockstar romance. So I would still recommend this one. And it is part of a series. I haven't read the other books in the series, so I can't really tell. But I would expect that the depth might come in the further books. So that's Idol by Kristen Callahan. Next one is not really a rockstar romance, but more of a musician romance, and it is focused a lot more on the songwriting part and the behind the scenes of making music rather than the parts of being on stage, like Idol is, for example. And it is Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. I know Colleen Hoover tends to stir up a lot of controversy, especially in the past year, but I still wanted to include this one because it was one of my favorite musician series that I've read. So I thought I would still include it, and you can decide for yourself if you still want to read it or if you just don't like this author in particular. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can just Google it. It's all over the internet. This book is about Sydney and Rich and about their connection that is built through music. So Sydney is in a relationship with someone who cheats on her, and she has to move out pretty quickly. And in that situation, she turns to her neighbor, who is Rich. And she's actually heard him play from across the street, I think, from her balcony. So Rich is actually a musician who is also deaf. And the way that Colleen Hoover portrays their connection through music is really just beautiful to me. It is a story about connection, about communication, and about the power of art and music. It's really emotional and it's really messy, and it definitely made me cry. What I really like about Hoover's writing is that she always explores emotional conflicts and moral questions. So that is also the case in this book, where there are a lot of questions about loyalty and temptation, and the situation that these two then end up in is really complicated. Without giving too much away, you might not agree with everything that the characters do, and that's also totally fine, but I thought it was really interesting to read about and to think about, and that's what makes these stories so emotional and what makes them feel real, because in real life nothing ever is as easy as it sometimes seems in romance books. And this one is also part of a series, so if you like this one, you can have 2 more books after that. And I've read both of these and I really love them so much. I think I gave the whole series 5 stars. So of course I would really recommend this one, especially if you're into the songwriting and song creation part of music, or if you think you might enjoy that in a romance book. Now let's dive into Good Girl by Piper Lawson. This series, I don't know if I have included it in the Good Girl, Bad Boy series, but it would definitely have fit that recommendation video as well. And it is a trope that is very familiar, and that at least I have read quite a few books with that trope. But I think this one is a book that does it really, really well. And our heroine in this book, Haley, she is very different from the characters that you would normally find in a good girl, bad boy type of book, because she's really smart, she's really driven, and she's totally a badass. She's not just along for the ride, she has her own goals and her own dreams that she follows. The story kicks off when she meets Jax, the brooding rock star with a troubled past. And what I really love about this book in particular, and the series as a whole, is that it is not just about the romance, but about the connections and characters and the relationships, because the side characters are also really important, and some of the more interesting plot points have to do with the side characters, and I really liked the way they were included, and they didn't feel like they were just in their own bubble, but it all happened in this bigger context of life, and there was a whole world that happened around them and that was really built up. Especially for a series, I think that is so important for it to be interesting and to have a plot that is sufficient to keep going over 3 or 4 books. And I also did finish this series, and I can really recommend it. And then there's even another series that follows some of the side characters. So I haven't read that one, but I might read it because the books were really good and I really like the writing style and the pacing. So I would definitely recommend checking that out if you're also looking for something where you dive into a world and you follow the characters for a long time. My last recommendation is Duet by Harper Bliss. And that one is a bit different than the other ones because it follows 2 bands who go on tour together. And it is an age gap romance between 2 of the women in the bands. So these are all female bands, both of them. And the one is opening for the other. And because they are on tour together, the tension is really intense. So we have the front singer of The Lady Kings, is the name of the band, and the front singer is called Lana. And then the group that opens for them is called The Other Woman, and the front singer is called Cleo. And these 2 sing a duet together in the concert of The Lady Kings. And that is where their connection really starts and where they think that there might be some chemistry between them. And that is also really interesting because in the same way that in the first book we were talking about fame and idolizing someone, it is also the case here, but on a different level because they are both musicians. And one of them is the opening band. So Cleo also really idolizes Lana and has this great admiration for her voice and her whole history and her past, which also includes some really emotional aspects that Cleo might not have expected before. And she does know about the stuff that happened in Lana's past, but of course, reading about it on the internet and then getting to know that person is an entirely different thing. And there's something really raw about these characters and how they interact with each other, and they're being really emotional and they have these intense feelings and everything is really messy, but they're still communicating, and it's not in a way that I thought, oh my god, can these please just talk to each other? They were talking the whole time. And there are also some entanglements with the other band members and what it means to them and how a relationship between these 2 could impact the bands, and if their music is more important to them than their feelings for each other. And yeah, just so many layers to this that it was really interesting and cool to read. And at first I wasn't really a fan of the age gap in this, but over time I really came around to it. But still, that would be my one critique about the book, that sometimes there was a bit too much admiration from Cleo's side, and also the other way around. I felt sometimes the tension and relationship between these 2 was even a little bit too much. But still, as you know, if you have watched my channel before, I'm not the biggest fan of drama, so that was something that was to be expected. But I really liked how deep the story was and the themes that it dealt with, which also include grief. So if that is something that you don't want to read about, I would stay away from this book. But it was handled really well, in my opinion. And if you're looking for a story that goes beyond your traditional, typical Rockstar romance, I would really recommend this one, because it really goes into the complexities of love and loss. And yeah, it also has really interesting side characters, and I really like the way that the tour life was explored and shown in this book. So here you have it, 5 Rockstar romances that will all take you on an emotional roller coaster and ride. And each of these stories offers something entirely different. And I really like the variety that I found in all of these Rockstar musician romance books. And especially the way that really none of them stayed really superficial, but they all explored fame and love and relationships in a really meaningful way. Let me know in the comments which one of those you are most excited for to read, or if you have read any of those, and if you have any more Rockstar or musician romance recs of your own. And if you've liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you had a good time, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!